Let's talk about the communists. The people who unleashed this on the world and have somehow positioned themselves as the saviors of the world. So a quick background. So for over a decade now, China has positioned itself as the leaders of the world, the global leader, and not just economic, but the moral leaders, institutional, cultural leaders of the world. We're in the 21st century, and they want the 21st century to be China-centric. Let me say it again, China-centric. Now, what I think is important to know about that is that the world has always been China-centric. This fact blew my mind when I first heard this a couple years back. It changed my whole perspective. So from 1500, which is like the most we can go back and have reliable data. From 1500 to 1890, so 400 years of that data we have, China was by far the world's largest economy. Not even close. So we got some charts here. So in 1500, China's GDP was $100 billion. This is in 2015 dollars. So $100 billion, that's on the far left, and the right hand side, you got India. India was right there. So you have this center, like, India, China was the center of the world, not even close. France was third. So while India and China were $100 billion GDP, France was $18 billion. A pittance. England was only $6 billion, not even in the picture. China and India were the juggernauts, always have been for hundreds and hundreds of years, even into the 1700s, when we think maybe the world was more Europe-centric, right? Even then, France was third. China's GDP was 120 billion. France was 25, so just 20% of China's GDP. England was the 8th largest country in the world, economically, GDP-wise, at the time. 8th in 1700. So we'll jump ahead, 1820. England's finally rising up in the ranks. They're now the 3rd largest. So they got on the podium, but still not even close. This is 1820 right here. Look at China. England's 3rd, but England's GDP is still a 6th of China's in 1820. All right, let's jump ahead, 1890. It's when the USA first beat China, 1890. It's when we first took the lead. That's 1920. Do we have 1890? Maybe not. That's fine if you don't have it. 1890 is when we first started beating China just by, and then here's 1930. This is when we started crushing China. And I think when we think of the world order, we think like a graph like this. All right, America in the lead, number 1 by far. But that's the anomaly. Now China's back on top. Now, I share all this not to nitpick over the numbers here. The point is, we see China as the world's largest economy as this new thing that's happening, as this odd outlier. Like, how did China become the world's economy? China, they think in terms of centuries, and they see that they've reclaimed their rightful place as the biggest economy in the world. To them, they've always been on top, except for this short blip where things didn't go well for a minute. But now they're back where they should be. And I think that perspective is really important, certainly if you're analyzing where China's coming from. America is the newcomer to the world stage. We are the blip in history. And the blip as the world leader. China's always been the world leader, and they're trying to reclaim it. And in many ways, they have, but they're certainly in the process of it. So we've talked a ton on the show about the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, you may see it written out as. So this is China. Do we have a map of this? Guys, there's some good maps out there, but this just kind of gives you an idea. So they're trying to reform and reclaim these ancient trade routes by sea and by land through the Middle East and Europe. And they're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars on ports and rail and road infrastructure all along the way to make it happen. So all these local areas in India, the Middle East, East Africa, and through Europe is seeing a huge influx of Chinese money. So let me give you an idea. Like the dollar, like we think of the dollar as the currency of the world. That's a new thing. Like that's a blip. That's not normal or guaranteed forever. So when you have China investing all over the world, they want the Chinese currency to be the currency of the world. So these areas are seeing an influx of Chinese currency, they're seeing an influx of Chinese people, they're seeing an influx of Chinese media, Chinese culture, Chinese products, Chinese politics, Chinese institutional power. And you see China already leveraging this with media outlets. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I don't see anyone else talking about this, but I looked through African media outlets in Africa. And they're all praising China for stopping the COVID virus. Like what? And it's because China's leveraging their power to, again, present and proclaim themselves as the leaders and the saviors of the world. Now, our media here in America is not doing much better. Remember yesterday we played that clip of the CNN story? That was straight plagiarism of the Chinese propaganda newspaper. So CNN's not any better. CNN isn't any better than African media, but you get the idea how China's trying to do this. Slater Crusaders, thanks for watching the first on YouTube. If you want more, like, subscribe. We got plenty.